We should be doing that with our study. We all want that prize. And he says, I myself will not be disqualified for that prize. And I think that's what we all want. The day we meet our Lord and God, and we want to be able to stand before Him and say, we fought a good fight, right? That's what we all want. Well, in 10, for I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers, that our forefathers were all under the cloud, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered over the desert. So here we have Paul sort of saying that the Jews were in fact sort of baptized, if you want to think of it that way, quote unquote. Baptized in the cloud, baptized in the sea when they went through the Red Sea escaping the Egyptians. Does that seem honest and fair? Sort of an example? Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, they were in captivity in Egypt, and they were subjected to the idol worships and the pagan rituals that went on from the Egyptians. So they were indoctrinated. Now they're leaving that. They got to be baptized into the truth now. Does that seem fair to say? Well, he says in verse 6, now these things occurred as examples to keep us from setting our hearts on evil things as they did. Do not be adulterers, as some of them were, as it is written. People sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in pagan revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 of them died. We should not test the Lord, as some of them did, and were killed by the snake. And do not grumble, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroying angel. Most of the people that left Egypt to go to the promised land didn't make it, to include Moses. So that sort of gives us an example. I mean, we look and have a lot of talks about Moses, a very religious man of God, but he did something that God did not like. And it was an innocent little thing. But because of it, he suffered for it. He didn't get to step foot into the promised land. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. And when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. How many times do people sit there, woe is me, I'm in such trouble, I'm in financial trouble, or physical aches and pains and whatnot. Work is horrible. They're treating me badly. My marriage is in trouble a little bit. We're always fighting and arguing. Things are not going good. What about that? Haven't we at one time or another been in a pretty bad argument with our spouse? Haven't we done that? Or am I the only one? I mean, we've had some arguments, but we always made up. I mean, we're human. We have our opinions. We have our biases. We have our own feelings. And when you step on my feelings, what happens? It's like anything we do in nature. You attack a little cub of a mountain lion or a bear or anything like that, what happens? That mom's coming after you. That mom will give her life up to take care of that cub. Well, don't we as the same thing? When we are thinking, we have our own basic thoughts and opinions. When somebody attacks us personally in that feeling, don't we lash out in that regard? Is it good? Is it bad? You ever think about it? As we read down through 10, Paul seems to be going through a lot of different things, and he's setting the stage for some of his other chapters that come out here in 1 Corinthians. He's letting them know that, people, we all have our difficulties. We all have our problems. Well, in verses 14 through 17, therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry. I speak to sensible people. Judge for yourself what I say. Is not the cup of thanksgiving for which we give thanks a participation in the blood of Christ? And is not the bread that we break a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one loaf, we, who are many, are one body, for we all partake of the one loaf. Makes sense, doesn't it? So that sort of gives a little bit of insight as to what the Lord's Supper is about. When we partake of the bread, we, who are many, become one in Christ. Isn't that what the intent is? The cup, the blood of the Christ. It cleanses us of our sins. It's for all of us. We, who are many, it takes care of everything for us. Now, there's many, and I'm like Paul. I don't name people, but there are some that sit there and say, what about one loaf? We should have one loaf here, break it apart, and then serve it to everybody. Is that what happened on the Passover? When Jesus took the loaf, he blessed it. Take a piece. Everybody takes a piece. We got little round wafers that we break off a piece, but there's lots of little ones. Who broke it? I mean, no. And probably a big loaf. This is unleavened. Pardon? That's right. It's like the cup. A lot of people don't like to have the individual little bitty cups, and some, when they pass, you take the cup, then you return it back to the tray, so as to help on the cleanup afterwards. There's other places like what we do. You pass, you take it, and you keep passing, and then we'll collect the cups later. We're not lazy. Well, when we were there at Macklin Road, I fixed a communion every Sunday for 10 years. I prepared 650 individual little bitty cups. That took a while right there. But many a Sunday we came in at the very beginning when we started there, no trays out there. Uh-oh. Somebody has slipped up. Somebody overslept or left town and forgot that they were supposed to do it that week. And it takes a good half hour to an hour to do that for that many cups. And then there's always somebody, when you're passing it, yeah, here, let me have it. And that juice goes everywhere. It spills over. Now I got to wash them afterwards and clean that up. Expeditious, orderly. That's what we're trying to do in our service, isn't it? When do we sacrifice some of this time and orderliness to do what is scriptural? Like I say, I've been to congregations where they've had one cup, and they always took it to the sickest, oldest person in the church take it. I'm not trying to offend any ladies, but it's always about a 95-year-old lady coughing. I always call them consumption Connie because they seem like they were on their deathbed. And she's taking that first drink, and I'm going to take a drink after that? I don't think so. Health reasons. What do we do? I think in the brotherhood, we have a lot of people that have got divided views on that. I can understand one cup, but it's not the cup that makes the difference. It's the contents of the cup. It's the fruit of the unfermented fruit of the vine. That's what's important. That's what we're sharing in. How we do it, I don't care how you do it. Personally, for me, for health reasons, I don't like one cup for that reason. It's not that I'm saying that you're sicker than me, but in this day and age when we got so many different diseases and health problems, why aggravate the situation? It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, am I wrong? People need to think about that. Mm-hmm. But it's not a wine like we have today, which is about, anywhere from 9 to 17%. Theirs might have been 1 to 4%. Oh, I know, but I'm saying that's what people from out in the world sit there, the historians and the people that dig through tiny little manuscripts to look up what was it like back then. And it's difficult to ascertain which it was. Was it the... No, it doesn't. It's the contents. What are we symbolizing? What are we communing with? Well, then you got others that will sit there and take this to extreme. When do you become drunk? That first little sip, you're one sip drunk. You realize that? Now, it sounds comical. Did you use mouthwash this morning? A lot of mouthwash has got alcohol in it. The main ingredient in most of it. So you are, quote unquote, drunk. Cough syrup. But see, if you use mouthwash this morning, and as soon as you left your house, 1 block away, a police officer stops you and says, I smell alcohol, and gives you a breathalyzer test, you could fail it because of the alcohol in your mouth. Did you realize that? So, where do you draw the lines here in our society? Our society is a lot different than the Jewish society back then. We have to try to look, and we have to understand a little bit about what they're doing and try to keep away from it and be Christian, like Christ, right? That's what we're trying to do. But to understand, no. Correct. Uh, well, see, it's like the previous chapter. Paul said, I would wish that everybody could be single like I am, because we're going to go through trials and tribulations. And I can serve the Lord because I have got all my attention on Him. I don't have to worry about my wife. I wish that everybody would be like me. Sounds good, doesn't it? What did the Catholics do? Forbid to marry, which in the Bible, don't forbid them to marry. Yeah, and there's other denominations that forbid to marry too. So here's a goal for us, but as men and women in this world, we have our biases. We have our opinion. That sounds like a good opinion to aspire to. Well, I'm going to force it on everybody because I believe it. You see what happens? That's the reason why last week I said when we teach the Bible, and what scares me the most about trying to teach a class is that I don't want to say anything that offends anybody or is wrong. And I don't want to lead a brother or sister astray. But at the same time, what is the truth? I got to teach it all. I can't ignore one little part like you're saying. Because what happens is that then I start teaching error. I start teaching my doctrine, not the doctrine of Christ. You see how very, very, very subtle it can be and how easy it is to stray away from the truth? So we have to be very careful. Consider the people of Israel. Do not those who eat the sacrifices participate in the altar. Do I mean then that a sacrifice offered to an idol is anything? Or that an idol is anything? No. But the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. And I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot have a part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons. Are we trying to arouse the Lord's jealousy? Are we stronger than He? He's coming into the Lord's Supper. Because here in chapter 11, the church at Corinth was doing something that was really offensive to a lot of people. Well, as we keep reading in 10:23, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything is constructive. Nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others. Now, how many of us can honestly say that's what we try to do? I've got my opinion, you've got yours, and we're going to argue. Who's going to win? Nobody. That's right. Nobody's going to win on that. Because when you leave, you're going to be mad at me, and I'm going to be mad at you. And we won't be talking to each other for quite a while. Oh, hi, bye. And that's about all we'll do, isn't it? What have we accomplished? Nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others. That's a hard thing for us to do. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Now, that's sort of a funny statement to put in there. Why did he put that? Well, if we go back to old times there, when a Jew walked into a meat market, what would be the first thing he'd ask? Is it kosher? Was it prepared a certain way? Was it offered to idols? Was it offered to demons? Was the blood drained first? A host of other things. Is this unleavened bread? Is it leavened bread? At certain times they had to do certain things. It had to be prepared a certain way. It had to be blessed a certain way. Jews typically asked this question immediately about everything that they came in contact with the normal pagans in the community. Do we do that? We don't need to. Do you know that the meat that you get at the store probably isn't kosher? Does it bother you? It's still good, isn't it? Still tasty? It doesn't bother us. Should we be bothered by it? I don't think so. Eat anything sold without raising questions of conscience. Now that becomes pretty significant because everything of the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. God created everything. He made it for us. We are to use it to our benefit. If some unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, Eat whatever is put before you without raising the questions of conscience. So in other words, don't be like the old-time Jews. Is it kosher? Was it a sacrificial meat? But if anyone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, for both the sake of the man who told you and for conscience sake. Why do you suppose he told you this was sacrificed to idols? Testing you. And people are going to do that, aren't you? They test us all the time. Once they find out you're a member of the Church of Christ, they're going to throw every kind of obstacle in your path to test you to see how strong your faith is. They'll do that just, I hate to say it, but they think we're a bunch of hypocrites. We say and do one thing when we may or may not respond like they think we should. And that becomes difficult for us to grasp and understand. Well, but it says, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the man who told you and for conscience sake. The other man's conscience, I mean, not yours. For why should my freedom be judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something I thank God for? It was sacrificed to idols. It was sacrificed to demons. I say a blessing over the food and I partake of it. I thank God for providing me with the opportunity to have some good food. So why are people judging me because I'm doing something that looks bad? You ever think about that? I'm not saying that these people are right, but it sure seems two-faced on their part, if you will. Does that seem fair? So whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause another to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God, even as I try to please everybody in every way, for I'm not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. That's the hardest thing right there. And I think it's buried in there. We don't have to do something for anybody else. We're doing it for the glory of God. And what does God want us to do? Teach and preach the word, the gospel. That's all we're supposed to do, isn't it? So if we do that, but unfortunately, it's like I said, people are trying to judge us for some reason. I'm not your judge, and I'm not even going to try. I am not going to sit there and say, yeah, that's a sin. No, you're okay. I'm not going to get into degrees of sin. I've got enough sin in my own life I have to deal with. Does that make sense? Does that seem honest and fair to everybody? Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to imply that. Yeah, we are to point out sin as it applies to the gospel. There's people that do a lot of things. It's like when I talked about, Jeffrey Dahmer being baptized. There's some that still to this day maintain that he should never have been baptized. That's not my decision. Somebody that's been divorced 2 or 3 times, and now he's married again. They've been together for 20, 30, 40 years. Got grown kids. He comes forward because somebody's been studying with him. He comes forward and wants to be baptized. Not my decision whether he had scriptural divorces. I'm going to still try to teach him, and if that's his decision, that's his decision, not me. God will be the one that judges that, not me. And we all have our opinions on things like that, don't we? And I guess that's the reason why I'm really, really scared anytime I'm standing before a bunch of people, because somebody will misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Yes. So horrible. Was it? Well, it'd be just like if I all of a sudden started spewing off nothing but four-letter words in front of everybody. And you'd sit there, I mean, panic, right? Gosh, darn, shoot. These bywords that everybody uses, the polite way of cussing. That's all it is. It's a polite way of cussing. Everybody here knows what I'm saying when I say those words. We all do. Does that make it right? Is that a sin? A little white sin. Jeffrey Dahmer killed 17 people. And he was part cannibal too. That makes his sin even more atrocious to us. More heinous. More disgusting. But that sin, gosh, which one's the greater sin? In God's eyes, they're all sin. He can't take any of it. That's the reason why we have the blood of Christ. What should we do? We need to stay away from doing those things. And it's hard for a lot of us, especially in the work, because we're surrounded by people who don't believe the way we believe. And so it's so tempting and it's so easy for us to slip and say a few things. We become acclimated to their language, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but we can assimilate that into our talk, our way of doing business, because that's the way everybody at work does. Yes. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm more religious than you because I haven't done some of the things you've done. We all set ourselves, I mean, we're human. We try to compare ourselves with each other. We try to assess what we feel and think because of the collective whole. You are an example to me. Hopefully I'm an example to you. And okay, yeah, I know I'm better than you. We all do that to some degree, don't we? Yeah. But we all do it to an extent, don't we? Even a tiny little bit. Yeah. Yeah. But as a human being, okay, the good Lord made a lot of perfect heads. The rest he covered with hair. I've heard that so many times. I got a plaque at home on the wall. God made only so many perfect heads, and the rest he covered with hair. I don't have a lot of hair to wash. I got a lot of face to wash. I've heard all these jokes. And I've heard all these comments. Does it bother me? No. I don't care. If you got hair, great. I'm glad I don't have to deal with it. For 30 years, I shaved my head completely, totally. I don't have a lot of hair, and I don't miss it. And it's funny, these little bitty kids that are innocent and sweet as they are, when they meet me for the first time, you don't have any hair. You know, they think they're telling me something I didn't know. You have sin in your life. Have I told you anything you didn't know? Now, for some, no, I don't sin. When we say we don't have sin, haven't we started sinning right then and there? So we have to be very, very, very careful about what we say and do. I try to throw out ideas to spark a little discussion, a little thinking, because we have a tendency to get complacent in our ideas and our beliefs. Well, as we're talking on in chapter 11, follow my example as I followed the example of Christ. I praise you for remembering me in everything and for holding to the teaching, just as I passed them on to you. Now, I want you to realize that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. In other words, you're dishonoring Christ. And every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. It is though her head were shaved. If a woman does not cover her head, she should have her hair cut off. And it is a grace for a woman to have her hair cut or shaved off. She should cover her head. A man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God. But the woman is the glory of man. For man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. For this reason, and because of the angels, the woman ought to have a sign of authority on her head. A lot of people don't like these verses. They don't like them. But what does it mean? Pardon? Covered? Well, he's talking about praying and prophesying too. Now, Paul later on also says, I will not suffer a woman to usurp the authority over a man in worship. Right? So, what about this praying and prophesying? That was probably not being done in a public assembly or worship service. You go out here on the street. Could a woman pray out here on the street? Could she prophesy out there on the street? Yeah, because that's not in the worship assembly. But she should do it with her head covered. Even today. No, there's not. But a woman could be out here, standing out across the street on the corner praying. Now, in here during our worship service? No. Now, right. She should. Now, do we do that? Me either. I've seen a lot of men out there, preaching, so to speak. I don't think, I can't tell if their preaching is also praying and it's a loud verbal prayer. I don't know. Why do they do those things? That would be my question. Pardon? To be seen. They have their glory right there. That's it. They think they're doing something for God and for Jesus. But they're getting their glory right now because they're being seen by men and women. Right? Now, if if a lot of people are trying to read into this, we only have one person in here that's got her head covered. So she's the only one that is, quote unquote, scriptural then, isn't she? If you go by that strictly. We have to think about that. No. But she's ready to. Right? Correct. That was shameful. No. A prostitute. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. And what was prophesying for? Mm-hmm. No. No. Yes. Mm-hmm. No. Well, see, it's just like if you start speaking in tongues. Speaking in tongues was usually another language, known language that people knew. I would love to be able to speak other languages. When I was a kid and we lived over in Germany, my mom said I spoke fluent German. I can't speak one single word of German now. 2 years of foreign language, Spanish, in high school. I spoke halfway decent. I don't know but a couple of 20, 30 words in Spanish. I can understand if they speak real slow. Like I said at the very, very beginning, the first day, I got southern ears. I hear it 10 to 20 miles an hour. You talk faster than that, I don't understand you. And that's my problem. I would love to be able to speak in a lot of different languages. I can't. So you start speaking in a language, I'm going to go home and I'm going to study up and to learn another language because I want to be just as important as you are. Isn't that what we do? Is that our motivation? In some cases, some people, that's their motivation. It should not be our motivation. We shouldn't be doing that. A while ago, we was talking about having a tier. Paul, right here in these first few verses, God is supreme, Christ is next, then there's man, then there's woman. that bother anybody? What about the feminists this month? They don't like that. Man and woman are equal. Yes. Okay, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. But they would argue, wait a minute, equality is equality. And it's difficult for us to accept that. God created man. And some people believe that Adam was going to be here on the earth for a while, and then he's going to be translated into heaven. Adam was created mortal. He was a man. He had a time of which he was going to die. But God saw that he was lonely. He needed help. He took a rib and made woman his helpmate, his partner in life, to help him get through this world. Not to step on, by his side, right? Because that's where your rib comes from. She's to be by your side, your confidant, your companion, your friend, your sojourner, so to speak. It doesn't sound like woman is way down below man. There is a hierarchy here, and people read into it. But it's not a hierarchy that has any meaning in any other sense that God is supreme. Christ is the head of man. We are not to have our heads covered when we pray and prophesy, teach, what have you. But a woman should. Yes. Okay. I can accept a lot of that. Everybody hear that? Just as smart, just maybe not as physical. More compassionate, more humane, because they take care of the kids, take care of the household. Now, how many guys really would wish that the woman would go out and work and we could stay at home? But the kids would drive me crazy. But it lasted a lot longer than that. But boy, after a couple of days, I want out of that place. I really sympathize with my wife on being able to handle the kids and run the house. And some work, yeah. But I mean, that was a matter of choice. We want things in our life. We want more creature comforts or a better house or better clothes, what have you. And that's a choice that the woman made, that I'm going to work outside the home while the children are in school. But typically, the role behavior, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That companion, that helpmate. What you can't do, he can do, hopefully. Does that make sense? Does that seem fair for us to determine that that's our positions to each other? Now, with that right there, he's saying a woman should have a covering to show subjection to her husband. That was custom then. Is it custom now? No. So what do we do about that? Well, I know the time is up. I hate to leave things at this dividing point, but there's a lot of people that look at the women's liberators. There's a lot of men that are very effeminate in their actions and their behavior. I don't want to prejudge anybody, but we have a tendency to do that. And that's a fault that we all have. Does that mean that they're wrong? I have to get more information. I can't sit there and say, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, and the rest of you are all right. I don't have enough information for that. And I don't think we should try to do that. But we all do it to some extent. Any other comments?